Oh. I will present about the situation of Palestinian refugees from Syria, a community of over 500,000 people who originally came to Syria after 1948, after they were expelled from Palestine in 1948. Some of them came later in 1967 and in 1970, but the majority are those who came in 1948, their children and their grandchildren and even their great-grandchildren. It's a society which is currently under the same circumstances as other fellow Syrians with whom they lived and with whom they were very well integrated, although they were able to preserve their own identity. They are under circumstances of the civil war in Syria, and they are being displaced and dispersed all over Syria, but also outside Syria. And as a community, they are being destroyed. My research, which will be turned into a report, is based on the analysis of different other reports, analysis of the media releases, but also mainly and most importantly, it's based on field interviews which I conducted in Egypt and in Lebanon, but I also managed to speak with some of the Palestinians over Skype, like for example those who were displaced from Syria and found themselves in Sweden or other places of the world, Thailand and Indonesia. So this is the way the information was gathered. I was planning to shed some light on the legal side of their situation, but I will leave it to my colleague Hanin, who will give you all the details of the different legal particularities of the situation of the Palestinians. I will just mention briefly that Palestinian refugees are generally under the mandate of UNRWA, that is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East. Whenever they are present in one of the 5 territories when UNRWA operates. That means Gaza Strip, West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. If they happen to be anywhere else than these 5 territories, they should be automatically under the protection, under the mandate of UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. This is not always the case, as for example currently in Egypt, and we will reach this point and we'll give more details about it. So, and this specific situation of Palestinian refugees is regulated by the Article 1D of the 1951 Refugee Convention, the main legal instrument of the refugee regime, of the refugee protection in the world in which we live in. So, there are cases, maybe we should go to, actually, okay, I'm going to speak about Syria now specifically. There are 12 camps where Palestinians live in Syria. These camps are listed on the website of UNRWA, you can have a check. There are 2 more camps which are not listed on the website of UNRWA. One is Husseiniya camp in the suburbs of Damascus, and one is Al-Hol camp for Palestinians who came to Syria from Iraq. And this Al-Hol camp is administered by UNHCR. So we can say there are 12 camps for Palestinians, 14 camps altogether for Palestinians in Syria. And there are also Palestinians living outside the camps. As I mentioned before, in Syria it's not an obligation for Palestinians to live inside the camps. They were very well integrated with the Syrian society, so many of them lived in different cities in Syria. And in the same way, the Palestinian camps became sort of normal neighborhoods of cities. For example, Yarmouk camp, the biggest camp in Syria, became a normal neighborhood of Damascus, where not only Palestinians but also Syrians, Iraqis, and other nationalities lived. Currently, among the 529,000 of Palestinians registered with UNRWA in Syria, 80% of this group, according to UNRWA estimates, are in need of urgent assistance. 44% are displaced within Syria, while another 6 to 10% are displaced outside of the country. Camps in Syria can be divided into 2 groups depending on their situation. There are those who are completely controlled, under control of the Syrian regime, which means their situation is slightly better because there is no direct shelling and there is no siege on these camps. There are camps which which were infiltrated or which have presence of the anti-regime militants inside, and which were surrounded and kept under siege by the Syrian regime for this reason or for any other reasons. And these camps are in a severe and very difficult situation. I'm going to describe the situation of Yarmouk camp, which is under siege, and which is, just one example, but because it's the biggest camp and the situation is the most severe, so I will speak about this camp. So Yarmouk used to be a place where 1/3 of all the Palestinians in Syria used to live. From the beginning of the Syrian uprising, which now turned into a civil war, the camp was under sort of observation of the Syrian regime because it's somehow a perfect place for Syrians to take refuge, to use it as safe haven. It was both, or actually mainly, it was internally displaced Syrians who came to Yarmouk and lived there in its mosque and in its schools. The situation was like this until late last year, and many Palestinian inhabitants of Yarmouk were involved in helping these people, in helping Syrians who came to their camp. They were providing them with relief, which means food, medicines, blankets, and other basic items of daily use. This action of providing relief to Syrian displaced is considered now in Syria as a criminal action, and many of them were targeted by the regime. Some of them died under torture because of being so-called relief activists. The situation changed dramatically in Yarmouk on the 16th of December last year, when there was an aerial bombing by a Syrian regime plane, airstrike. It happened on the 16th of December. The airstrike targeted two places. It targeted a mosque and it targeted a school. Both of them were occupied by displaced Syrians. What happened after the airstrike was the gradual closure of the camp by the Syrian army from outside and keeping it under siege, but also regular shelling of the camp with different type of shelling and sniper fire. The closure of the camp meant that there was a checkpoint placed at the entrance of the camp, and this checkpoint operated both by the regime army and by the some of the factions, or actually one Palestinian faction supportive of the regime. They were regulating and they were controlling the movement of people and the movement of food. They were deciding who is allowed to enter and who is allowed to leave, how much food people are allowed to bring in, and so this checkpoint was, and still is, deciding the life of the camp inhabitants. What people from Yarmouk told me, the camp hasn't seen any electricity for months. There is no medicines entering the camp, and there is also no doctors available there. All the doctors left because they were personally targeted, and they had to flee for their own safety and for their own security. If there are any medical cases, they are being taken care of by paramedics or by people who are students of medical studies, second year, third year. They are definitely not professionals, but this is the only people left inside who are able to give any sort of medical help. The camp also doesn't have any mobile coverage. Occasionally the landline is operating, and this is the only way for people inside to connect with the outside world. The movement is occasionally allowed out of the camp. So many people left thinking that they're going to go out of the camp, bring some food and come back, but they didn't know they won't be able to come back. So many were separated from their families who are still inside. I wanted to speak about one particular case of Ghassan Shihabi, but I don't think we have time. I'm just going to mention that he was killed because of bringing bread to the camp. He wanted to bring 500 packs of bread to the camp, and this is when and why he was targeted by a sniper and he was killed. The number of Palestinian victims in Syria is estimated between 1,500 to 2,000. The tragedy is not only inside. Tragedy is also when Palestinians are trying to leave Syria. And what happens is that they have, right now, they have no access to any country that is neighboring Syria. They are, of course, not able to go to Iraq because the Palestinian community from Iraq was already expelled from there starting in 2006. So they know that it's not a place for them to go. Jordan officially closed its borders for Palestinians from Syria, and Jordan announced it in January this year, saying that there is no entry policy. This is very clear violation of international law, of the principle of non-refoulement. But Jordan said that we are sorry, we can receive Syrian refugees, we're not going to receive Palestinian refugees. Lebanon, on the 6th of August, started implementing similar policy to Jordan. It wasn't announced, it wasn't officially confirmed, however, it was being implemented. The only people who managed to enter Lebanon now are people who are able to pay a bribe, who have some connections, who have a meeting in the embassy, or who have a plane out of Lebanon within 24 hours. Other than these cases, there is no entry for Palestinians fleeing war in Syria to Lebanon. Not only this, the more important thing is those who managed to enter before 6th of August this year. They enter the country on a tourist visa, because this is what they get when they arrive to the border. They are stamped in their documents a 15 days visa, and this is clearly a tourist visa. Then they are supposed to go to the general security in Lebanon and try to extend their presence there. Some of them go and they manage to get the permit to stay in Lebanon for another month, up to 3 months. Some of them are not able to go to the general security because they have different fears. The general security in Lebanon shares their information with the Syrian security, so they are not able to do so. They can go in Lebanon to UNRWA, and their name will be taken, and the fact that they left Syria and they're relocated to Lebanon will be registered. However, they don't have any legal confirmation of the fact that they left Syria as refugees, that they didn't come for tourism to Lebanon, that they came there because they were fleeing for their lives. UNRWA right now in Lebanon is in a position to try to assist them, to try to grant them some sort of humanitarian aid that Majid was talking about. However, UNRWA is in no position to give them confirmation of the fact that they fled the war and that they are refugees in Lebanon. Some of them tried to approach UNHCR in Lebanon because this is what their what Syrians do, what Syrian nationals do when they arrive to Lebanon. They go to UNHCR and they register with UNHCR as asylum seekers, as refugees in Lebanon. Those Palestinians who approach UNHCR, they were, of course, explained by UNHCR that they have their own agency, which is UNRWA, and they should go to UNRWA. The fact that UNRWA is not able to provide them protection and that there is this legal gap, which I leave to Hanin to explain, the legal gap is not covered right now by international community and by anyone. The number of Palestinians from Syria in Lebanon is up to 90,000. I'm afraid my time has finished, but if you allow me, I'm just going to speak about one more case in Turkey, and then I will conclude, if we can, or
Make 2 minutes.
Okay. I mean, there are other places that I wanted to discuss, like Turkey and Egypt and other faraway locations where Palestinians reached, but I will just limit myself to one story from Turkey. Palestinians from Syria to enter Turkey, they need to hold a visa. They have no chance of obtaining such a visa because they have no access to Turkish embassies, which are located in Lebanon and in Jordan. This is the two nearest embassies. So, of course, they enter Turkey when somebody flees for his life. They enter Turkey irregularly with help of smugglers and in this type of circumstances. When they are in Turkey, they are, of course, irregular, and the only reason for them for being in Turkey is try to reach the safety of Europe and is try to get themselves out of Turkey. I interviewed somebody, a young Palestinian man from the camp of Aleppo, who became wanted in Syria because of relief, because of food that he was providing to displaced families. His father gave him all his life savings and told him to leave Syria immediately. He reached Turkey through smugglers, paying off smugglers, and then in Turkey he found another smuggler who put him on a truck. This truck took him to Sweden. He had to pay to this smuggler 5,500 euro, all the life savings of his father. A friend of his from the same camp, from Neirab camp, Aleppo, he didn't have the same amount of money. The only thing he could afford to get himself out of Turkey was a smuggler's boat, a so-called death boat. So he paid $3,000 and he entered a boat which sank, and he tragically lost his life in this boat. So this is the story, and this is the circumstances in people who are already refugees and who are being displaced for the second time, found themselves now. I leave the conclusions maybe for my conclusions, my suggestions, what should be done by the international community for the time when we have questions from the audience.